So if you ask me if I've overcome my situation, I'll say, no, I'm still overcoming. Every day, I'm forced to make the decision to live free of bitterness, free of rage, free of feeling like a victim. Like many abused women, it takes a lot of time to heal, to rebuild, and to remember the person that you were once created to be. So I hope to continue to share my story and to bring issues on the use of power and control and how it relates to violence against women and children. There's still lots to be done, but thank you for letting me share my story today with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. We're going to open up to questions now. Feel free to raise your hand. We've got some here. Dr. Grant does some work with addictions and substance use. What role do you think drug and alcohol use plays in violence against women?
In terms of the women being violated?
Yeah.
It's interesting working in the community for 4 years on what we called a Health Canada project called Women in Substance Abuse. This is where I was introduced to women who were addicts. Some of them were in recovery, some of them weren't. Probably is the best job I've ever had besides this one. I worked with 300 plus women over a period of 3 years. I lost count after 300. And it was in a very small previous manse where a Presbyterian ministry used to live, but it was given over to the city. And it was called Support to Single Parents. And in that 3-year period, it was a very small house. And one day I just happened to count how many women were around this house. I got 300. And after that, I just stopped counting. And that's where I was introduced to what has become my life's passion. Because the women were addicts, but I would sit in on focus groups that we set up to try and find what were the alternative means for these women to go into recovery. And I just finished my master's program at University of Toronto and gone back to Moncton to take on this job. And I was a researcher educator. And I had a nursing background and I knew a lot about the physiological changes. I didn't know much about the social changes. I'd been trained as a sociologist and a criminologist, but hey, I was out there with the women, loving every minute of it. And they were funny too, loved them to death, still in touch with them. So sitting in the focus groups, I started to hear about this violence and battering that they experienced, and that's not a question that I asked. And I thought, wow, something's going on here that I'm not aware of, but pretty soon I was very much aware of. And all the women that I dealt with had come from these types of backgrounds. And we're talking about brothers raping them, the brother bringing in a gang of friends to rape them. One woman in particular that I remember, it started when she was 8. It ended when she was 11. And my question was, why didn't you tell your parents? And she said, well, my brother said if you did, I'd kill them. And of course, she believed her brother, who at the time was 13. So she was bound by that. Other women told me some stories about their grandfathers, their uncles, their father's friends, their brother's friends, ad infinitum. And I'd often go home at night and say to my husband, is there any family out there that is not dysfunctional? And I went to the shelters as well. So I got all sides of the picture, and we were encouraging women in the shelters to come to our focus groups, because my job was to set up programs for these women. So I was so intrigued by their stories, I decided to do some work, and I did interview 25 women. 23 of the 25 women I interviewed came from this type of background. And that just floored me. And when I present at conferences, people will say, well, I'm surprised it's not all of them. But this was not a question I asked, it just came out. So to come back to what you originally asked, the women would say to me, when I would sit in on the groups that we would have, we had 18 set up one time, and that was all over the city. My job was to do that. Great fun, to get these women involved in their recovery.